5 years ago, I had a car accident. Nothing crazy, I just crashed into the car in front of me on my way home from work, and the airbags went off and my car was totaled and I was in shock. When I got into the ambulance, I noticed that my chest was hurting like crazy, so my mind was full of pictures. Maybe a rib was broken and punctured my heart, or maybe an organ was torn, or maybe there was blood in my thorax. I have to mention in the beginning, I'm not a medical professional, but a journalist who likes to think in pictures and stories, and also a huge Grey's Anatomy fan. Anyway, I got to the hospital and I had my marathon of x-rays done, and the doctor comes in and she says, "You have a broken sternum." 2 words that took away all the pictures I had in my mind. I knew what was up, I knew why I was in pain. So when people ask me, "What's wrong with you?" I could say, "I have a broken sternum. I'll be fine in 5 to 6 weeks." Naming the source of the pain was a game changer for me. It was different when I was in one of my first meetings with German top executives, and I noticed that 90% of the people there didn't look like me. They were all men. It was different when I came into one of my first meetings in a senior leadership position with one of my male employees, and people thought that he was my boss. And it was different when in one of my very first jobs I noticed sexual harassment in the workplace, and I realized that the man in question got promoted to another part of the company. I didn't have words for the pain I felt in these situations. When we talk about humans and change, we quickly come to theories of behavior, of learning and unlearning things. Behavioral therapy is one of the most common forms of therapy, unlearning dysfunctional patterns, relearning new patterns. The way we as humans learn is, I think most of you know about the ways we learn. The most common one we know is Pavlov's dog, the dog that hears the bell when he gets food, so he starts producing saliva when he hears bell after some time. And another way is that we learn by imitation. For example, the children that watch the Bobo doll experiment, where a man beats up a doll and the children watch him. And one group of the children watches the man being punished, and the other part of the group sees him getting a reward. So the people who see the man being rewarded for his behavior start imitating him. So for a very long time, I thought that in order to change as a society, we need somewhat of, collective behavioral therapy. We need to unlearn dysfunctional patterns, relearn new patterns, and if enough of us do it, and then with imitation over generations, change will come. I'm not saying that I think that is wrong, but I don't think that this is the start of change. I think language and words are the start of change. Because if we cannot name something, then how can we treat it? How can we change it? And the problem with pain in society is that other than, in the body, pain is felt very differently. Only parts of society are afflicted by some pains and others cannot even feel them. I think we need to find words to build bridges over something that I like to call the experience-empathy gap. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that. 4 years ago, I got a new job. I was promoted to start a new unit within the company. And I had to change offices from Hamburg to Berlin. Anyone who's ever started a company or a new unit knows the first weeks are just hustle, hustle, hustle. You just work like crazy, try to get things moving, try to get things started. So in those first weeks and months, I didn't change my email address. I didn't even change my letterhead. I was just so in my business. In my old office in Hamburg, my title was executive assistant, which meant as much as chief of staff. To those of you who like American politics, maybe they know what it means. In Berlin, the title chief of staff meant, or executive assistant, meant as much as secretary. So the word had a different meaning in the one place than in the other. After some weeks, I noticed that people would look at me in a funny way, and they would ask questions like, "Have you ever been to the secretary dinner? I've never seen you," or "That's an interesting move from secretary to managing director." And I got really upset because I felt like they were questioning my ability to do the job, and they were questioning my qualification. So I go out to my colleague, who's also my friend, and I tell him, "I'm so upset, like my feelings are hurt, they're questioning my qualifications," and he starts laughing. He's just laughing like crazy, and I say, "Come on, like my feelings are hurt, why are you laughing?" And he says, "Because it's so absurd." And I was a bit mad at him in the beginning because I thought, like, why are you laughing at my problem? But then I understood that to him it was absurd. Because for a man to be promoted to managing director of a company, and people going around telling that he was the secretary before and he did whatever he did to get this job, it just wouldn't happen. It's just so far off. Like, you know, when you tell me your brother is sick, I can relate because it's in the spectrum of things that could possibly happen to me that one of my relatives gets sick. Or if you tell me you have a broken sternum, I can 100% relate, I've been there. Or if you tell me that you lost your job, I can relate because, you know, it's one of the things that can happen to me. But what happened to me, or what I felt, the pain I felt, was just a pain that he could never feel. So that's when I understood that we needed to find words that really objectively turn a feeling into a state of mind and help us bridge that gap of empathy and experience. So I started looking for words that really objectively describe pains, and I found quite a few. I brought only a couple today. A really, really treasured chest of those words is the whole concept of unconscious bias. There's different kinds of unconscious bias, and basically unconscious bias means assumptions, role models, stereotypes we carry within ourselves that, you know, we just get them. We don't do anything to get unconscious bias, they just develop over time. We cannot choose if we get them, we cannot really get rid of them, instead of like just asking and confronting ourselves. So unconscious bias is something that, you know, we learn when we grow up, when we look at the world, we learn by imitation. And one of the really good examples for gender bias is the Heidi Howard example. Maybe some of you know it. It was a group of students at Columbia University, and they got the same CV, exact same CV of a person with great education, impressive work experience, except for one difference. One CV said Howard, and the other CV said Heidi as the name of the person. So the students were asked to rate how much they would like to work for that person. And the group of students who said Howard was like, oh my God, what a great guy, so inspirational, like he's done all these great things, I'd love to work for this guy. And the group that had Heidi said, oh, she seems a bit like difficult, maybe like not very nice, I don't know if I want to work for this person. So that is an example of gender bias. And as I said, there's so many different biases, and I brought one more, which is one of my favorites right now, the affinity bias. The affinity bias is something we can use to describe that we tend to gravitate towards people who are like us. We gravitate towards people who look like us, who have the same values like us, who have maybe the same background, or maybe, you know, same experiences. So, you know, the pain I described in the beginning of my first top executive meeting, where I saw that there were almost all men, all white, you know, wearing the same suit. That's when I thought, okay, I have a word for that now. Affinity bias, that's the word. So don't get me wrong, it doesn't take away the pain to have a name for it, but as I said, it turns a feeling into a state of mind. You know what's up, even if it sucks. There are some more words that I found, and I just want to quickly jump through them. One word is the word fragility. And it is the state that someone gets defensive when they realize that there is structural inequality, that they are maybe even a part of the problem, or that they profit from it. You know, when someone says, no, that is not a problem, and you know, they try to fight you or even blame you for the problem as the group that is suffering from the pain. That is what we call fragility. There's white fragility, male fragility, different kinds of fragility, and I just love the word whenever I'm in a discussion where someone is, you know, defending a problem, where I'm like, okay, this is a case of fragility. Another word that really helped me is the word internalized oppression. I have witnessed, I cannot say I've often witnessed, but I have witnessed that women, for example, make it to the top, let's say to a CEO position, and they surround themselves with all male leadership teams. And you know, I looked at them and I wondered, why don't you hold the door open and let more women in? Why do you surround yourself with men? So the concept of internalized oppression describes that a group of a minority, as women are in the business context, when they make it to the top, they have internalized the rules of oppression in such a strong way that they use them against their own group. And the last word that I want to talk to you about today in this context is role congruity. One piece of advice that's been given to me has been the worst piece of advice, which is act like a man, negotiate like a man. And that advice is, I'm sorry, it's just BS, because of role congruity. Because the role stereotype is not just within me as the negotiator, for example, but it's also within the person across from the table. So when I act disaccordingly with this role stereotype, it doesn't really bring me any further because the person feels a bit irritated by it. So those are words that can help build bridges, help name pains, and there's so many more out there. You can find them in science, you can find them from activists, philosophers, in literature, and I really, really recommend going out and looking for those words. But there's another group of words I want to talk about, and that is words that already exist, that we use in everyday language, and that are, in my opinion, impediment to change. The first word is the word normal. Normal is, for me personally, it's an all-star word. I use it all the time. It's one of my very favorite words. When someone asks me, how was your day? I say, normal. When someone asks me, how do you think that is? I'm like, normal. But, in society, there is no such thing as normal. In science and in medicine, yes, in your blood work, there's a certain range that is considered normal, which usually means good. But in society, let's just talk about family models. The family where the mom stays at home and the dad goes to work, is that normal? Or the family where both parents identify as male, is that normal? Or the family where one parent is only there and the other parent left, whatever, is that normal? The truth is, there is no normal. And the problem with this word is that by labeling something as normal, we consider everything else as abnormal or unnormal, which automatically classifies it as a lower standard. We are no scientists in everyday life. We name something as normal because we think that the majority of people does it or thinks it. But we cannot know that. We are not scientists in everyday life. So I try to use the word normal a lot more consciously and not label things as normal if that means something else is unnormal. Another word that I use all the time that I think is impediment to change is the word loyal. I get called loyal all the time. I'm a loyal partner, I'm a loyal friend, I'm a loyal customer, I'm a loyal employee, I'm a loyal member. It gives me a warm and fuzzy feeling when people call me loyal. But have you ever thought what the word loyal, in the sense that we use it, really means? It means standing by someone or something's side without asking questions. Is that a good thing, not to ask questions? I stick to you, whatever you do. The more I thought about it, the more it became clear to me that loyal, if used in a wider sense, is actually somewhat of a micro-fascist concept. Don't get me wrong, it's good to be loyal to your small group of friends, to your family, maybe even some work-related things. But in a broader sense, loyal is also used to suppress groups and minorities. For example, let's just look at women. The loyal wife is the wife who stands by her man no matter what he does. Let's just remember that rape within a marriage was considered legal up to the late 1990s. It's good to reserve yourself the right to ask questions and the right to leave when something goes south, even in a friendship. So I now prefer the word solidaric. I'm solidaric with my colleagues and most of my friends. I stand by their side, yes, but I reserve myself the right to ask questions and to leave when things go into the wrong way. So up to now I've talked about two groups of words, about the words that we can use to build bridges and about the words that we already have, but maybe that we need to reframe or reconsider their meaning. There's a third group of words I want to talk about, and that is words that are exclusively used for one group or that change their meaning with the group they are used for. And one of my favorite words that change their meaning is the word emotional. As a woman in business, if you're being called emotional, it is not a good thing usually. It usually means that you are a crazy person. When someone says, that girl is emotional, it means she's out of control, she doesn't have her shit together, like, be careful, that chick is crazy. When someone calls a man emotional in a business context, it usually means he's in touch with his feelings. He's an upgraded version. He can not just think, he can also feel. He has empathy. What a great leader. Let's follow this guy. The different standards when describing men and women are widely talked about, and they reflect on what we see in society. Let's just talk about who goes on parental leave. In Germany, less than half of fathers, 44%, take parental leave, and out of these 44%, 3/4 take off only 2 months, which are usually used for a family vacation. Yet, if a man decides to take a year off, it usually doesn't mean his career is over. He makes the next step quicker while the woman who takes her year off or goes on parental leave and comes back part-time, it's usually at the end of her career ladder and faces the beginning of the gender pay gap. So let's talk about some words that are used exclusively for one group. Bossy, for example, or bitchy. I don't know if there's any man here who has ever been called bitchy, but the word stem suggests that it is a word exclusively for women. Also, the word hormonal, which is used to describe how women are crazy, because of their cycle. I said this before, I'm not a medical professional, but from everything I remember from back in high school, men have hormones too. Or the word curvy, which is used to talk about women that have curves. It is also a word I have yet to come across in the context of describing a male, or even in fashion and advertising, I'm yet to look for the curvy man section. And if you take a more intersectional approach at these words, it sort of opens up into a matrix, like the term of the angry black woman, which is usually a frame used to portray women of color as irrational and uncontrollable. Or if we talk about members of the LGBTIQ+ community, there's even more words that are used to frame them as irrational or uncontrollable. So why did I talk about language today? I think that we need to find words that build bridges, that we need to reframe existing words, and that we need to understand that some words change their meaning within their context. We need to call out these words, and we need to find words that help us really objectively describe problems we have in society so we can find a solution. Language are our most powerful weapon in a digital world even more. Words can build bridges, and they can burn them within seconds. They can bring us together, and they can divide us, and one word can make all the difference. Language is the one thing that most noticeably adapts over time. Words come and go, they change the way we pronounce them, we change the context we use them in, and when generations later will look back on our words, they will try to understand us. So if we want to change, I think language is where we need to start. Thank you.